Have y'all ever thought about starting your own podcast but thought it would be too complicated? If your answer to that question is yes, let me tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to start a quality podcast. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from any device. And on top of that, Anchor is owned by Spotify, so you have access to a full library of sound effects, background music, transitions, and even full songs that you can add in. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, and it will hook you up with sponsors so you can make money on your podcast. It's literally everything you could ever need to start a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. 3, 2, 1. What is up, everyone? It's the Raw Prospect Podcast, back for episode 63. Today is Tuesday, April 6th, and joining me, as always, from Austin, Texas, the Stat King himself, Michael Ween. What is up, man?
What is up? It is episode 63 of the Raw Prospect Podcast. We have a packed episode today. To recap it for you real fast, we're going to start by recapping the national championship in the end of March Madness, which ended with the Baylor Bears as the 2021 NCAA men's basketball national champions. We're going to talk about some college basketball coaching hires. And then the meat of the episode today will preview the upcoming major in golf, the Masters, which begins on Thursday. And then we will conclude by talking about a trade, another quarterback trade that went down in the NFL yesterday as Sam Darnold was traded to the Carolina Panthers. And we'll talk about how that impacts the upcoming NFL draft, because it certainly does have effects on many teams in the top 10, top 15 range. So it's going to be a fun episode. Let's jump right in.
Right, exactly. We'll start with last night's national championship between Baylor and Gonzaga. Baylor came out as champions, cutting down the nets. Scott Drew's first championship, Baylor's first championship. And the one thing that I thought when I was watching that game was just they were who we thought they were, and the guard play was just electric. When they started out the game and Gonzaga was playing man-to-man, they didn't have the athletes, just straight up didn't have the athletes to guard against these guards that Baylor has. Davion Mitchell was amazing, 11 assists and 0 turnovers. Maceo Teague and, oh my goodness, I'm
Jared
blanking.
Butler.
Jared Butler, exactly. They just have so much depth. We talked about it in every episode where we've covered Baylor. It seemed like the dream matchup we waited for all year, and I have to admit it was slightly underwhelming. I kept waiting for Gonzaga to make a run in that second half. Obviously, they were down 25 early, and then they cut it to 13, and I was like, okay, maybe they'll make it a game. But it just never seemed to happen for Gonzaga. They couldn't get the stops. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts, since you've been following these teams all year a lot more closely than I have.
Well, obviously, it was the ultimate championship game, the one that we were hoping for from the beginning. These teams were pretty much the entire season ranked number 1 and 2 overall in the AP polls. And they were the number 1 and number 2 overall seeds in the tournament for a reason. The two best rosters in college basketball by a lot. But I think the biggest story here for a lot of just general college basketball fans who don't follow the game as much as I do, and I guess as much as even you do, is Scott Drew, the story of Scott Drew in this Baylor, in the rebuild of this Baylor men's basketball program. When he took the job, I think it was 16 or 17 years ago, this program was in the dumps. And that's kind of to put it lightly. He took the job right around the time when Texas had that roster with TJ Ford and Kevin Durant, and they were making a Final Four run right around like 2003, 2004. And, this program was in the dumps, and he's taken it all the way to this point. So just a great story overall. He's an awesome coach. He should be applauded for the job that he's done to rebuild this basketball program. And they're not going away anytime soon. Now that they have this championship under their belt, the recruiting is going to get better. With the amount of transfers that are entering the transfer portal nowadays, they're probably going to get some high-level transfers, some experienced players coming in to replace some of the guys that they're losing. Baylor's not going away anytime soon. They're going to be one of the top programs here for the next 10, 15 years, as long as Scott Drew is the coach in Waco. And then the second thing I wanted to say was this was a team that really came together and really wasn't really expected to be here. And what I mean by that is you're talking about who I think was the best player on the team, and Davion Mitchell, the lead guard, number 5, scored 15 points last night, was virtually locked in from the start. I think he made the first couple shots, if I remember correctly. He actually started his career coming off the bench, barely getting any minutes under Bruce Pearl at Auburn. And then after his freshman year, he transferred to Baylor. So these past 2 years, he's really made a leap. And he was, I think, the best player on the court last night. You talk about Maceo Teague, the sharpshooter, probably their best outside shooter. His career began at UNC Asheville. He also was a transfer that they got. And Scott Drew did a great job of developing him into a really good player. You're talking about their 4th guard. When you have the luxury of bringing in college basketball a 4th guard as good as Adam Flagler off the bench, you're in really good shape. You're going to win a lot of games in the tournament because, as we know, experience in guard play, that's what wins often in this tournament. So he was fantastic, but he was a transfer from Presbyterian. So he wasn't really expected to be here or be this good. And then Jonathan Chamucha, it's a hard name to pronounce, but I got it down. He started his career as a bench player at UNLV. So this team came together in really a weird way. It wasn't your traditional, we got a bunch of 4- and 5-star recruits and we made it here. These were guys that were overlooked at schools that they started their careers at. They came to Baylor. They all came in, bought into one mission under a fantastic coach in Scott Drew, and they got the job done. They came out last night. They were locked in from the start. And I think a big X factor in last night's game was you can't overlook the efforts of one Mark Vidal. You're talking about a guy who had, I think, double-digit rebounds. 8 of them were offensive rebounds. He kept a lot of possessions alive for the Baylor offense. And Gonzaga just couldn't get any stops. The shooting was too good. The guard play was too good. The play inside was too good. It was just an all-around performance for Baylor, and you got to applaud that. What a great season. And, great season for Gonzaga as well. They just had a bad half. And even in that bad half, I think they went into halftime only down 10. So at that point, I was thinking, well, maybe they can make a run at this. They definitely have the firepower to, but they had to do it in that, first 5 to 10 minutes of the half. And instead of that, Baylor made the run and just put the game away. By the time you reached the halfway point of the second half, Baylor they kept their foot on the pedal and they put the game away. But congratulations to both programs. Gonzaga, the almost undefeated season, fantastic season. They just ran into a buzzsaw in Baylor. And congratulations to the people in Waco, the people on Baylor University's campus, and Scott Drew and this fantastic team on getting the job done.
Right. And you sent me a really telling text yesterday. You said, I pray for Waco's infrastructure right now. And from the looks of it, from a few of my buddies from high school that are attending Baylor, it was quite the night.
Oh yeah, yep.
From what I've seen. But with that, I'll just say that Baylor, they were so focused and locked in. It just felt like their intensity. Whoever talked to them pregame, whoever pumped them up pregame, got them in the perfect mind frame to go out and perform. So credit to that entire coaching staff and that whole program. That was really cool to see. And even though it wasn't close, it was a really entertaining game. But with that, we will move on to our coaching.
But before that, I just want to say, it was so fantastic, joyful to have March Madness back after a 2-year drought. What a fantastic tournament. The bubble was great. Not a whole lot of problems or severe problems. I don't think we had any really COVID issues. We had some coming into the tournament, but I don't recall any actual teams having to, withdraw due to COVID. Upset filled in the first couple rounds, and we got the national championship we wanted. It was just great start to finish. We got an all-time game. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the all-time game we got with UCLA. What a great story under Mick Cronin. And that game against Gonzaga was just, it was incredible. I know Jalen Suggs really wanted to win last night, but I mean, you made one of the greatest shots in tournament history. So, and you're going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. So just full of great moments. It was so great to have March Madness back, and I'm already looking forward to next year. But with that, let's get into these coaching hires.
Yeah, right. And one more thing about Jalen Suggs, and we'll move on. For sure, we'll move on. But one thing that I mentioned last year before the NBA draft is the fact that some of these guys didn't get the chance to have that showcase of March Madness to show their skills. And this year, it came, and we saw some guys really show what they had. Johnny Chuzang, he could be a guy who declares for the draft possibly, and I could see him going in the lottery for sure. So,
right.
Yeah, that. With that, we'll move on, guys. We tracked that on a little bit, but we had a lot to say there. It was a fun tournament. Texas, Shaka Smart moved on. We were very critical of him after that first round loss to Abilene Christian, and he stepped down and went to Marquette. And in his place will be Chris Beard, the coach from Texas Tech, former Longhorn, two-time Big 12 Coach of the Year, one-time AP Coach of the Year. A really amazing resume. So I want to hear your thoughts first. You're attending Texas.
Well, first thing I want to say is credit to Jay Hartzell, the president. Credit to Chris Del Conte, CDC for short, the new athletic director at Texas. was hired in the fall of 2017. And credit to, I'm forgetting the Board of Regents guy. I'll look it up here when you're talking. But credit to everybody involved going out to get their number one target. And they knew from the start. If you read some of the quotes that have come out since the hiring of Chris Beard, from Chris Del Conte and from Jay Hartzell, they all put their minds together once they knew that Shaka Smart was leaving. And they said, okay, we're going out and we're going to get Chris Beard. He's coming. They didn't say we're going to try. They said we're going to get him. And they did that. So credit to them. Two major coaching hires in a span of 4 months, with Steve Sarkisian for the football team, and Chris Beard, one of the best in the business here for the basketball team, who, despite the lack of NCAA tournament success, they did have their best season in a long time here this past year under Shaka Smart. So while we criticize Shaka for his lack of NCAA tournament success, we have to applaud him for giving his all to this program, doing a very good job in the recruiting process. He recruited a lot of very talented, good NBA players, put them in the draft, and he accomplished. He won the NIT. He brought Texas their first Big 12 basketball championship in a long time. He did some good things here, but he just didn't get it done in the big time. So I thank Shaka Smart for his efforts, but Chris Beard is the man now. This is a home run hire if there ever was one. Just to give general college basketball fans a little history here, Chris Beard obviously attended UT, started his career as a student assistant under Tom Penders, who was the coach before Rick Barnes, if you're wondering. Served under him for a little bit. In 2015-2016, he was hired at Little Rock as a head coach. He spent 1 year there. He led them to a 12 seed in the NCAA tournament. We'll backtrack. He went 30-5 overall. He won the Sun Belt regular season and tournament championships. This is his first year ever as a college head coach at a small program. And he won an NCAA tournament game. As a 12 seed, he upset number 5 seed Purdue, made it to the round of 32, and lost to a very good, at the time, Iowa State program, who had a lot of good players. But he took this program to the tournament, one of their only tournament appearances in a long time, and that led to him getting the job at Texas Tech. And ever since he was hired at Texas Tech in 2016, he spent 5 years there in Lubbock. 112-55, which is absolutely incredible. That's near a 70% winning percentage in a tough conference. 3 NCAA tournament appearances in 5 seasons, but you discount 1 season, which was last season because there was no tournament. So that's really, he made the tournament 3 out of 4 seasons. Really good. The only time he didn't was his first year there. He was still getting adjusted to a new program. Only his second year ever as head coach. But 3 tournament appearances. He went 9-3 record in tournament games. He had an Elite 8 appearance in 2017. And obviously, 2018-2019 led them to the national championship. And came within a couple, some would say, controversial plays of beating that Virginia team in the national championship. So, as you mentioned, 2-time Big 12 Coach of the Year. That's not easy. A lot of really good coaches in the Big 12. some Hall of Famers, in fact. And he won, obviously, the AP National Coach of the Year in 2018-2019. So there's a little history, if you're unfamiliar with Chris Beard, little brief history for y'all. He's a winner. And the thing that I like about him is he wins in March. Overall in March, and I think 4 tournament appearances in his 6-year coaching career. He has a 10-4 record with an Elite 8 appearance and a national championship appearance, and that's with lesser players at Tech. They had good players at Tech, but he's going to get better players here at UT and Little Rock. So I love it. This was the guy I wanted to. I think, as he said in his press conference, he wants to win now. But the biggest question with this Texas basketball team now is the roster. The first thing he's got to do is figure out the roster for next season. He's got a lot of guys up in the air. We still haven't had a decision on talented freshman Greg Brown, and we don't have decisions yet from Matt Coleman, who we expect to move on, but they're giving seniors that extra year of eligibility, so you never know what Chris Beard might be able to work there. And then Andrew Jones and Courtney Ramey also, both juniors, could come back for their senior season. So he's got a lot to figure out roster-wise. I know Donovan Williams and Royce Ham transferred. You're obviously losing Jericho Sims and Kai Jones. So the only real scholarship player on the team right now is Brock Cunningham. But I think Chris Beard's going to love Brock Cunningham. He's a Chris Beard type of player. So just needs to figure out the roster, do some more recruiting, which I think he'll do, and I love it. But I'm not going to drag on too long.
Right. And one thing that I thought about as soon as this coach was hired, I'm going to make a connection to, obviously it's a different sport, but when the Cowboys were in their coaching hiring phase last summer, I wanted them to hire Ron Rivera. I don't know if you remember that, but I think Ron Rivera would have brought to the Cowboys what Chris Beard will bring to Texas: stability, leadership, and an identity more than anything. Just an identity.
Right.
He's going to come in and he's going to just command excellence, especially on the defensive end of the floor. If you look at Texas Tech these last few years, they've consistently been one of the best defensive teams, and that's been their calling card. That's how they win games. Obviously, Texas has been good defensively. At times, this year they were very, very good defensively. But beyond that, though, I just think Tech was able to do it with slightly lesser talent, and he was able to do it more consistently as well. Like year after year, year in, year out, game after game. He got his team to bring it every single night, and that's extremely important in a conference as tough as the Big 12. So this was a really great hire, and I think this was the more sure thing hire than the coach that we're going to talk about in a few minutes here with North Carolina.
Right. But let's move on to that, because Hall of Fame coach, one of the best coaches of all time, Rory Williams. He coached at Kansas for like 15 years, won a national championship there. And he's been the coach at North Carolina for the last 18 years. And he won 2 national championships at Carolina. And he obviously made another, but lost due to an unfortunate buzzer beater by the Villanova Wildcats and Chris Jenkins, which we all remember. But overall, Roy Williams, I mean, there's nothing else you can really say other than one of the best college basketball coaches ever, probably top 5, top 6. We know Dean Smith is up there, another coach at North Carolina. We know, Coach Wooden for UCLA is up there. Coach K. These names that everybody sort of knows, he's up there with those guys in that pantheon of coaches. So congratulations to him on a great career. He said he just didn't feel he was the right guy anymore. And we know Carolina has kind of struggled the past 2 seasons. Obviously, last year was a really weird year. They had a lot of injuries and such. And they obviously wouldn't have made the tournament last season if there was one. This season they made the tournament, but they just didn't have the same feel as a typical Carolina team. And Rory said, you know what? I'm 70 years old. I'm one of the best coaches of all time. Well, he's a humble guy, but he obviously knows that. And he just didn't feel he was the right guy. And obviously, there's health issues, but that's a whole different conversation. But I think it was a good call. So congratulations to him. In terms of this hire, well, I'll let you go first. What do you think about hiring Hubert Davis? Do you have any knowledge? Did you do any research? What do you think?
I looked him up a little bit. I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory here. So he played 4 years under Dean Smith at North Carolina, was all ACC as a senior in 1992, and was drafted 20th by the Knicks in 1992. And he played in the NFL, in the NBA, not NBA, not NFL, in the NBA for 12 seasons. Started 156 games for the Knicks, Mavericks, Raptors, Wizards, a bunch of different teams, bit of a journeyman. Worked 7 years as an ESPN analyst for college basketball, co-host for College Game Day for some of those years. And then in 2012, he returned to be an assistant coach on Rory Williams' staff. And now he's the head guy. So this is his first time as a head coach. And obviously I don't know what he's like as a coach, but I think I think Williams' health was dwindling these last few years, and he knew it. And I think he knew this would be the right guy to, take on the reins when he left. I think he'll do well. I think if I'm him, I use this program's history to my advantage. I make sure I have the alums on my side, the Michael Jordans of the world, the legends of the program. Make sure that they're all with you. And one thing that Mick Croman did with UCLA when he got there is he immediately invited Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and all those guys to a barbecue at his house, and that really got the alums back involved with the program. So he can use that to his advantage and really assert himself as the guy long term here.
Right. I really like the hire. I know people aren't going to say it's necessarily a home run hire, like they're saying the Chris Beard at Texas is, but that's just because he's never been a head coach before, and that comes kind of with the territory. Unless you're, there's some rare cases, but, a lot of people are unfamiliar with Hubert Davis. But you nailed it on the head. He played under Dean Smith at UNC from 88 to 92. Was a solid player, really good three-point shooter too, I must add. Shot 43.5% over his 4 years from three at UNC. I think that ranks up there with their all-time leaders, I'm pretty sure, and averaged 12 points per game, including 21 his senior season, which you obviously mentioned. And then he was drafted 20th overall in 1992. Was a solid role player for a lot of teams in the NBA, had a good, solid 12-year career, averaged 8.5 points and was a very strong three-point shooter. I think that's what people remember Hubert Davis as. 44% from the field, from three, excuse me. I actually didn't know he worked as an analyst at ESPN, but I did know that you learn something new every day. I did know that he was an assistant. I have heard of him a couple times, obviously, under Rory Williams for the past 8-9 years, ever since 2012. And I think here's what I'll say. The positives, one, he's only 50 years old. So if this ends up working, you found your coach for probably the next at least 15 to 20 years, given that nothing weird happens and he can coach until about Rory's age at least. So you might have found yourself your next coach for the next 2 decades. He has experience as a player. So I think he understands kind of, even though it's sort of a different era now, I think he understands the game now, and I think he understands what it takes, both as a college player and what it takes to transition to the NBA and be a solid NBA player. And I think he can give some of that knowledge, hand it down to these players at North Carolina. I think the key for him will be hiring the right staff around him. I obviously don't know the details on like who might have left and who might be staying on that staff, but obviously that's going to be key. And I think the fact that he was backed by Rory Williams and the fact that Carolina wanted to keep this in the family, and they were outspoken about that at Rory Williams' retirement press conference, keeping this in the family, and a guy that they know and trust, as he served under a Hall of Fame coach and been groomed under a Hall of Fame coach in Rory Williams. So it's not a home run hire, but I like it. I really like it. I hope it will work out. It'll be good for college basketball if North Carolina can get, even though it's only a short little drop off here, if they can get back to being an elite program like they were just a couple of years ago. And I think he's coming in with a plan. I read an ESPN article that said, he wants to keep a lot of these younger players around. I think the point guard Love is coming back, so that will be good for them. Walker Kessler, I think, entered the transfer portal, but I think he said he's going to try to convince him to stay at Carolina, so that would be great for them, and develop some of these younger players. I like it. If I had to give it a grade, I just say I'll give it a B. It's not the flashy high, or it's not the home run that everyone wants, but we know a lot of these coaches they were after wanted, or a lot of these guys Carolina fans wanted, like the Jay Wrights of the world, weren't leaving the places they're at currently, just because of the situations. So, like it, don't necessarily love it yet, but hopefully I'll love it come next March, when hopefully Carolina gets back to the tournament as a top 4 seed and makes a run next year. So that's all I have to say.
All right. Yeah, I really have nothing to add there. You hit basically everything that I could have possibly thought of. But one thing I will say is I listened to a podcast to get ready for this segment, and it was like the emergency pod that from the CBS Sports Locked On College Basketball, I believe. I forget what it's called. But one thing they said was in the last couple years that Roy Williams has been coaching, in practice, he's had to have a chair that he sat in instead of being able to walk around and be, involved. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think maybe that took a toll on him, and maybe maybe he just didn't feel like he could do it anymore. And that I wish him the best. Hopefully he'll get his health together, man, because that can really go downhill quick, as we all know. So with that, we will move to our NFL discussion. A big trade went down. Was it Sunday? I believe. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago, but that's really beside the fact.
Yeah, that's not relevant anyway. But it was Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers for a second rounder this year and a fourth and a sixth rounder in 2022. Michael, go ahead and give your first thoughts on that trade.
Well, I'll be brief. That college basketball segment went a little too long, but we had a lot to say, rightfully so. For the Panthers, I really like it. I don't love it just because we haven't seen Sam Darnold be the quarterback we all think he can be yet. But obviously, a lot of that had to do with the organization he was in, the situation he was in with the New York Jets. Didn't necessarily have the resources he needed to succeed. So he gets a better situation here with the Carolina Panthers. He gets a receiver he's familiar with in Robbie Anderson. A really good, serviceable number one upcoming talent in DJ Moore. He also gets an all-pro running back, which he really didn't have with the Jets. Obviously, the version of Le'Veon Bell he got wasn't anything close to the Le'Veon Bell we saw in Pittsburgh, but and he gets a pretty solid offensive line. I think it's just above average. I think they're going to add to it in the draft. They're really going to solidify this offensive line. And so I think with also, I think, an upgrade at coach who runs, more of a college scheme and Matt Rule and an offensive coordinator and Joe Brady. I think this is going to be a good situation for him, much better than the one he had in New York. And for the Panthers, you're getting 2 years of team control at a relatively cheap price. This year, they only have to pay him $4.6 million. This upcoming season, it will be his fourth season in the league. And then next year, if they pick up the fifth-year option, which I believe they've already announced they will, you have to pay him $18.9 million, which is really cheap for a starter in the National Football League. So you get 2 years of team control at a cheap price, and you get him in a much better situation, better coaches, better players, better offensive line. I just have to see it to believe it. It's that type of thing. But the Jets, obviously not great, not terrible. 38 games in 3 seasons. 13-25 record, which actually isn't actually terrible considering how bad the Jets have been the past 2 years. I'll be nice and give them a 60% completion percentage, 45 touchdowns to 39 picks. Obviously, we'd like to see that interception percentage go way down here with the Carolina Panthers. Needs to clean up some of those ugly turnovers. But I think Matt Rule and Joe Brady can work with him. A 78.6 quarterback rating, very low QBR. And he wasn't protected well at all in New York. Sacked 30-plus times each of his 3 seasons there for a total of 98 sacks in his first 3 years, which is a lot. But I like it for the Panthers. Obviously, they weren't in a great position now that San Francisco traded up to that number 3 pick. They weren't in a great position to really get one of the top 3, top 4 guys. Because if you look at the 4 spot, it's Atlanta. And although it's been reported they're looking to trade down, I don't think they would have done a deal with the Panthers. And even then, you're maybe taking a little bit of a chance on a guy, depending on who it is. And there's no guarantee that a guy like Justin Fields or Trey Lance would have dropped all the way to 8. So now you're given the freedom of, well, you got the next best thing on the market, given that Deshaun Watson's going through a whole weird situation, but that's another story for another day. And he likely won't be traded anytime soon. You got the next best thing you could find, given that you're not going to be able to get a quarterback in this draft. And you're given the freedom to go build around him now and really go draft an offensive lineman with that 8th pick. And, you drafted all defense last year. You have nice players on that defense. Go draft the best player available. Build around Sam Darnold and see what you can do these next 2 years while you have them on a cheap deal. And if it doesn't work, move on and start over in 2 years. So be it. Because you're really not going to win this division. You're just going, to compete for a playoff spot. But from a Jets perspective, I love it. You get 3 picks. Now they have 21 picks as a rebuilding team over the next 2 drafts. We all know that they're going to draft a quarterback with the 2nd overall pick. Likely, at this point, like a 98, 99% chance it'll be Zach Wilson from BYU. But we can have debates. I like him. I don't like him as much as some people do, but that's another argument we'll have on an upcoming podcast. But I love it from a Jets perspective because at this point they just need to acquire picks and picks and picks. You get 3 really good picks from the Panthers. So I think it's another, as we've been saying this offseason, it's another win-win trade for both sides. But I'll let you talk now.
Well, I've never been a guy that's been that high on Sam Darnold. I thought coming out that he was a slightly overrated. Obviously, he led the country in turnovers his last year in college.
Right.
But, there have been moments where he looked competent. There have been moments where he looked like he could be the guy. If you remember a couple years ago, the Jets actually went 7-9. A lot of people forget that. They were solid, and especially when he was in the lineup, when he was there, I believe they were like 3-7 without him, and he had that kidney ulcer or whatever that was. And when he returned, they closed the season and finished 7-9. So the talent is all there, but like you said, I need to see it to believe it. But if I'm the Panthers, I want to see him earn the starting spot. I know I gave some picks for him, but I want to see him go compete and show that he has that competitive drive, that competitive spirit, because there are questions about what kind of leader he was in New York, just simply based on the fact that he never stood up for winning. He never seemed like he fought that hard to make sure he was in the best situation possible. And now that we're in this era of player empowerment, he could have done that. But I'm not going to criticize him for that. I'm just saying that he needs to go prove himself. Like he still has a lot to be proved, is all I'm saying. Go and compete for that starter spot. And if Teddy wins the starter spot, so be it. And if he struggles a little bit, then you throw him in. Let him have time to learn the offense. Let him have time to really soak everything in. And this organization is far better in terms of structure and everything else. So now there's no excuses. This is his career right here. These next 2 years, he gets to show whether he's an NFL starter or not. And if he's not, he'll either be out of the league or he'll just be a backup. Simple as that.
Right. And then from a Jets perspective, I really like it. As I said, with the
let me
draft
adjust
picks.
that. I forgot to adjust that part. I like it as well. I mean, you still don't know what these rookie quarterbacks are going to be, but I think they've wanted a fresh start because this last regime of front office staff wasn't very good. Now you have a new GM, a new coach, and you want to start a new culture and start anew, and you want to get your guy as your quarterback and not the last guy's guy in there. So I think it was the right thing to do. And considering that they already have Mekhi Becton at left tackle, and their offensive line is already pretty solid, I think they're in better shape to win than a lot of people think. They have some players on that team. We'll just have to see if they can put it together.
Right. And the one thing I want to say is, while that's very true, I think I agree with that. They're in a better position to win than a lot of people think. They could win some more games than people think. But at the same time, the division has gotten a lot better.
Right.
While they may be getting better, the Dolphins are a solid playoff contender. Obviously, there's questions about Tua, but they have a great coach, a great defense, some weapons on offense. They're going to be in the hunt for a playoff spot. The Patriots, as we've mentioned in a past episode, we think they really went out, spent the necessary money to improve their team in free agency. It obviously all depends on Cam Newton, but it's Bill Belichick. You can't doubt that. And then obviously the Bills are legit Super Bowl contenders, and they might have improved their team.
Right.
So it's a really tough division, but hey, we'll see what happens. But
Right.
we need to jump to what's upcoming in the near and immediate future here in about, I don't know, 36 hours.
Right.
It's major season again in golf. And the Masters is back where it belongs. The second week of April is springtime at Augusta National. The azaleas are blooming, and it's the Masters again for the second time in 5 or 6 months.
Right. Yeah.
So we're just gonna, for about, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, we're gonna preview this tournament. And I want to start by getting, obviously you're more familiar than I, and I didn't do a whole ton of research, but just give the audience a general rundown of Augusta, and then what are the general keys to winning this tournament?
Well, Augusta is generally a course that plays very firm, and it's one of the most undulated courses in terms of slope in the entire world. The entire course, it seems to be uphill and downhill, the whole course. And it tests every part of your game mentally and physically. It's one of those courses where experience rules over a lot of things because unlike the other three majors, this course is host of this tournament every single year. And the veterans know where to miss it in the right spots and be able to make up and downs. And some of the first-time players may not know. So one of the main things that I see every year is there's always veterans near the top of the leaderboard. One guy I always see is Bernhard Langer. He's been there for years and years and years, and it seems like he's always making the cut and he's always under par because simply from the fact that he knows where to miss it. And at his age of 60, I believe, he's only hitting the ball 260 yards, and he's just proof that you don't need to hit it far to play well at Augusta. You just need to know where to miss and know the spots you need to hit it at. A lot of these greens, there's different levels and parts of the slopes that you have to be on the right tiers where the pins are. That's another of the main keys. But one thing I will say is if the course plays firm, I think it will be really tough. I think it'll be tougher than what it played in November. I think
Right.
that November tournament, it played a lot differently than it normally would. I think in some spots the grass was like freshly overseeded, so it was a little bit softer. And
Right.
this tournament, it's going to go back to showing its teeth a little bit. The winner last year was 18 under, I believe, Dustin Johnson. I expect it to be closer to 10.
I believe it was 20 under. I think he set the record, but
Oh, my
I'll
bad, yeah.
fact check that.
I think you're right, actually.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think with that, if there's anything else I can add, I think you hit it right on the head. I think that's one of the storylines, which we're going to jump to here in a minute, about this tournament is the contrast of how it compares to a November Masters to an April Masters, when this tournament is usually played. How the course fares and how players, how it will play differently.
Right.
I did a little Donald Trump there. I don't know what I was doing. But anyway, let's jump to the elephant in the room. The biggest storyline of this tournament, I think, obviously you have Dustin Johnson trying to defend his championship, his green jacket, coming in here. But you also have Jordan Spieth, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast recently, and he garnered his first win in 1,351 days, or 3.7 years, on Sunday at the Valero Texas Open in, I believe, San Antonio.
Right.
And he's now risen to second, right behind Dustin Johnson as a 10-1 betting favorite. So with his play here recently, 4 top 10 finishes, I believe, in his first 8 starts this season. His short game, when I've watched him, has been absolutely impeccable. It's kind of back to where it was in 2015, 2016, 2017, when he was winning tournaments and winning majors. And in 22 out of his last 25 rounds, he has gained strokes on approach, which, if you look historically, is a key stat to winners at Augusta. They're good iron players, and they hit a lot of greens, because it can be tough if you miss greens at this place. And it seems his putting, he's got the monkey off his back, and he's obviously playing well right now. But I want to get your thoughts on him, and then also who you have as your favorites to win this week.
Well, with Jordan Spieth, it all comes down to the driver. And that seems weird to say with a lot of these tour guys, because normally it actually comes down to the putter. But with him, I'm not worried about his putter. His putter is as good as anybody out there. It's just him getting the ball in play that you have to concern yourself with. And obviously, last week he did find something with the driver. He was really solid to close that tournament. But hopefully he'll be able to find that consistency, because that will be the key to whether he contends or not. You can't win at this course from the trees, especially as a guy who doesn't have the length of some of these other guys out here. He will have to hit in the short grass, and that's going to be a huge, huge key. There's nothing really more to say other than that. But as for my picks, I made a list of guys that I have tiers, guys that I want to do well and guys that I think will do well. One guy that I have on the list that I think will do well is Scottie Shaffler. He contended at the WGC match play, obviously, and he's a guy who hits it a long way, and he plays a draw. That's a big thing. One thing I will say is at a lot of these holes, obviously you got to be able to hit it both ways, but predominantly most of these holes are draw holes. Hole number 2, that's a dogleg left par 5. Hole number 7, you got to be able to hit a draw. Hole number 5, you can go both ways, but then you bring the bunkers into play if you're not able to hit the fade enough. And then obviously the holes on the back nine. Hole 13, you got to hit a big draw around the corner.
Right.
And most of the holes, guys who have been able to hit the draw and left-handed players who have been able to hit fade, just that right to left shot in general bodes well for guys out here. And he's someone who hits that shot on a consistent basis. So
Right.
keep a lookout for him. And one of my dark horses for this tournament is actually Lee Westwood. He contended at the Players this year, and it seems like he's at a much better place mentally than he's ever been. It seems like he's more relaxed out there on the course, and he just seems like he's at peace with the golfer that he is. And that's typically when you win the most as a golfer, when you're in the right place mentally. I just wonder if it's too little too late for him, because obviously he's 46, 47 years old. That's pretty late in his career.
Right.
Another guy I have here is Bryson DeChambeau, obviously. But it's not that he hits it a long way that I have him on this list. I just think he's coming in with the right mindset to play better this time around. I think all the expectations and all of the hoopla with him hitting a long way, it kind of got to him the first time around headed to Augusta. He was obviously the betting favorite and obviously the main talk of everyone going into the tournament, and rightfully so. He still is to an extent, but some things have died down a little bit. And I watched his interview earlier, and he said the biggest thing he's focusing on this week is putting it on the greens in the correct spots. He said that a lot of times in last year's Masters, he was putting it on the green in places that were difficult to putt from. And on these greens, on this course, it doesn't matter how close you are. You could have a putt that breaks 3, 4, 5 feet just from 12 feet from the hole if you're not in the right spots. So if he's able to control his wedge game and put it in the correct spots and give himself uphill looks, I think he should be the front runner, if I'm being completely honest. Because with his power, and with the firmness that the course will be playing at, based on what I've been reading, it will be a huge advantage for him.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't argue with any of those guys, but there are some other names. I didn't do a ton of research here, but there are guys you just can't ignore.
Right.
Coming into a tournament like this. You obviously can't ignore a guy like Deschambeau. You hit that one right in the head. Obviously, we're watching for Dustin Johnson. I mean, he's number 1 in the world, and he has 5 straight top 10 finishes at Augusta coming in here. So he's looking for a 6th straight top 10 finish and a repeat victory. If he does that, he'll be the first since Tiger in 2001, 2002 to repeat at the Masters. But it's obviously going to be tough. It's not easy to do that. But he won in November, and he was tied second in 2019. And he's also tied fourth in 2016. So recent success at Augusta, and he obviously has all the tools to get it done. A guy like John Rahm, who I'm still waiting, and I've been waiting to break through with the major. Let's see. Sorry, I have my notes in the wrong place. He's 7th on tour in round one scoring average. It's just a random stat that I wrote down. So you could see him up at the top of the leaderboard early. It's just whether he can remain there. In November, in his past 2 Masters appearances, he shot 3 under each time in the first round. So we'll see how he fares. He's a guy I'm waiting to break through. Can't ignore Justin Thomas, second in the world golf rankings, coming off a win at the Players. Obviously, I think it's pretty tough to win at the Players and at the Masters. I think only one guy has done it, and his name is Tiger. You may have heard of him. So you can't ignore a guy like Justin Thomas. I do have a couple sleepers. And they're guys that don't get talked about as much. I want to get your thoughts on these guys. I did a little research. Cam Smith at 35 to 1. Mm-hmm. He hits the ball a long way, like some of these other guys do, at the top of the betting boards. He's only 28 years old, and he does have recent success at Augusta National. I don't know how much that actually plays into who wins and who doesn't historically, but he's familiar. He was tied second last year I guess 6 months ago, not really a whole year ago. And he was tied 5th in 2018. And then he obviously has he had a top 20 finish at the Players and a 4th place finish at the Genesis Invitational at Riviera. So those are really good fields, and he from when I watch him, he tends to do pretty well. So I'd look out for him maybe to be a sleeper. And then Matthew Fitzpatrick is a random dude that I came up with. He's young, 26 years old. He hasn't won yet on the PGA Tour, but he does have 6 victories on the European Tour. For what weight that holds, I don't know, but it's something. He's had some recent success on the PGA Tour. He tied 9th at the Players. He tied 10th at Arnold Palmer and 5th at the Genesis Invitational. So he's been playing well lately. He finished last season as 2nd on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting, and we obviously know you got to be good with the putter to win at Augusta, so he plays right into that. And he's never missed the cut at the Masters, and he's played in 5 since 2016. So those are just 2 guys a lot of people don't really talk about, but I don't know. Wouldn't be surprised if they at least, contend, much less win, though. That'll be tough. But, we could go on and on. We're still getting used to, figuring out who to put bets on and who really is going to win this. It's hard to tell, but I'm just really excited. I've cleared my weekend schedule. I'm just going to be watching the Masters.
Exactly.
Pretty much all weekend.
And I really like that Cameron Smith pick. He's a guy that I didn't think about when I was making my list of guys earlier, but he is as solid as they come. He's an incredible putter and just solid all around. You don't really see that many guys that aren't just blow you away in one area of their game. But he's one of those guys that he's a star because he's just solid everywhere. He's not just a long driver. He's not just a short game guy or whatever. He brings it. But right. One thing I will say to close this is I watched the Tiger documentary this weekend,
Oh,
and one thing I do want to say is I really hope that the Masters and the superintendent and whoever is running that there makes a statement for Tiger Woods, like honoring him, because
I do too.
what he did and what they did in 2010, just basically um, giving him a public whipping. Um, I mean, whether it was warranted or not, I don't know. But obviously, Augusta, from my perspective at least, I've always seen it as a place that it just has this underlying, just like undertones of racism underneath. And
Right.
I think they just need to make it clear that they appreciate Tiger and all he's done for that event, because there's a lot of people out there that would never even consider watching the Masters without Tiger ever being a golfer.
Exactly.
So that's one thing I will say.
That is a very good point. I watched the Tiger documentary right when it was released back a couple months ago. I might just watch it again. It was a really good, I think, for people who just want to learn something or aren't familiar with the actual Tiger Woods story. Episode 1 really goes deep into his relationship with his father, which we know is a very deep connection, and sort of his early on golf career. And then episode 2 goes more into the personal struggles, the health, the scandal and all and such. I might just watch it again. And I'm actually going to read the book that was written by an author who also produced the documentary. I had been wanting to read it for a couple years now, but it was released a couple years ago. But Tiger's one of my favorite athletes, also ever. But I'm gonna read that and I'll get back to you on what I learned from that. But anyways, yeah, hopefully it's a great tournament. And I think that's all we have for today.
Right, exactly. All I hope for every year in the Masters is just to see a collection of characters and storylines at the top. Last year, it felt like a 3-horse race for most of that final round, which is good, but it felt like Dustin Johnson's to lose the entire way. And obviously he was much deserving. He played amazing. But I want to see a much more compacted leaderboard this time around. Hopefully we'll get that. But with that, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, as always. I looked at the analytics, and about 50% of you guys aren't subscribed. So if you could hit that subscribe button for us, that would be much appreciated. Hit that notification bell so you can get notified for all of our videos, all of our podcasts. I just made an Instagram account as well. So we'll keep you updated there for when new episodes come out. And if you want to support the show further, I also made a Patreon that will be linked in the description. So thanks for watching, guys, and peace out. Enjoy the Masters, y'all.
Enjoy. Peace.